So Corbin, my one fun thing for this week, I just watched a documentary on HBO called In the Same Breath, and really, really interesting. It's about the start of the pandemic. Some people are probably a little bit sick of it, but what was interesting is the director, she's from China. She's lived in Wuhan. And what she did is she got people to secretly record in Wuhan hospitals and in China. And so, yeah, so she talks about how it kind of started there and what was going on, and then kind of how it was covered up by the government. And then she's also lived in the US, and she talks about how in the US, when stuff first started coming out and nurses wanted to wear N95s, like they weren't allowed. And so it was kind of covered up here. And so it's a really interesting parallel. Yeah. Like you'd think, oh, these two very different countries in their political leadership are going to have different approaches, but they both kind of were like, not a big deal. Don't worry about it. And really well done. Really interesting. So I really
it's a great title for something too. It's very dramatic right away.
Yes, you're right. Which is funny because you say that because I was like, In the Same Breath, I don't get it. And then after I watched, I was like, oh, now I get it.
Scary.
Yeah. Light bulb. Woo, so.
Yeah, my one fun thing, funny enough, has to do with China as well. They recently did a video game ban, and it's just something that I've been deep diving on because I'm like, they've always kind of done it, but it's something that I'm just like, what? I would have been arrested immediately as a kid. I play video games so often. The ban is you can only play from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and on holidays. And I'm like blown away by it because it's like, wow, they're really cracking down on like video game addiction and stuff, which I know is a thing, but it's not that much of a thing. I have a big gaming background, so it's just something I'm very interested in. Definitely check it out. Look up on NPR and stuff.
How are they regulating that? How are they?
They force companies to make sure that the restrictions are applied. So you have to give your phone number, your ID, like all these random things that like make sure that it's like ticking. And then also there's just people that you'll get fined or arrested or what have you, depending on how severe the crime is.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I played a lot of video games growing up too, and my son just discovered Nintendo Switch, so that would be very challenging.
He would be arrested right now.
I hope not. Oh, well, good. Well, I guess this week's theme was China. We're going around the world, everybody, with our one fun thing. So great. Thanks for sharing that, Corbin.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Inspired Actor Podcast and YouTube channel. My name is John Ruby, and this is my partner in crime,
Corbin Coyle.
Hey, there it is. Good. I like sometimes our guest is like, am I supposed to say something here? Today, we are excited to have Gloria Coco. She is an actress and a retired judge who most recently worked on the TV show Utopia with John Cusack and Rainn Wilson. Gloria, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here with you today. Thank you.
Well, it is our pleasure and honor to have you. We're so excited that you're here. Now, Gloria, first thing I want to kind of dive into, you are located in Chicago.
Correct.
Planning to relocate to Los Angeles.
Correct.
What are some interesting differences between Los Angeles and Chicago markets that you've noticed?
The number of casting directors in Chicago, you have maybe 3-4 main casting directors.
Yeah.
And in Los Angeles, as you know, I think you have hundreds. And so, of course, we know for film and television and a lot of other things, LA is the center of the universe. Where in Chicago it was always known as a theater town. You know, we know COVID has changed a lot, but people will say, if you want to get into theater, start in Chicago. A lot of great storefront theaters. I know that's what I did after I graduated from Western. I did a lot of that. And then I got into television and film, and, you know, the rest is history. But I think the markets are different, even though a lot of stuff is coming to Chicago. Some of the good stuff that's here, we know as Chicago actors that a lot of the really meaty parts come from actors in New York or LA. It's not always that Chicago actor that gets a good reoccurring or like a lead role. I mean, I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but it's not really what our experience is.
So, Gloria, I'm curious. I have not met a retired judge who is also an actress. I'm curious how those two things intertwine, and just a little bit about how you got to where you are today. Can you what from your background tied those things together or inspired those things?
Grazie alla Mananici Papalardo Coco. My mother. My mother. When I was 3 years old, my mother sent me to Ethel Gertrude dancing school. Rumor has it, I cried because I didn't want to get off the stage. But anyway, to fast forward, dancing school as growing up as a kid was my life. Wednesdays, Thursdays, Saturday mornings, on the weekends, we would dance. And by the time I was 10, I danced on television about 10 times. Lunchtime, Little Theater, Bozo Circus, that kind of stuff. I jumped out of a pumpkin on the Lee Phillips show. Anyway, I think that performance thing never quite left me. And when I was in high school, I did some of it. When I was in college, I did some of it. And then when I wanted to major in it, I transferred to Mundelein. And I remember Sister Mary Holywater was like, honey, what are you going to do with a theater degree? Be a teacher. You'll have it for the rest of your life, which is the most honorable profession. Absolutely. But that theater thing never left me. I mean, my heart broke. So, because I didn't, so that's how I got into pre-law. And my dad was a lawyer. But then I was blessed after I was a teacher and I started going to law school at night. And even when I was in law school, I was doing things. I was extra in movies that would come to town. I was fortunate enough to be at Second City and work with Del Close. That was kind of tough. I was teaching during the day, going to law school at night, fitting that in where I could. Oh, wow. That was very intimidating because you had actors from LA and Chicago coming to work with Del Close. Mm-hmm. So anyway, then I was fortunate to get a job as assistant state's attorney. And my mom used to say, to be a lawyer is to be an actor. Well, yes and no. So, I was a criminal prosecutor. So every day we did go to court. And then I was still doing this acting thing. I was as an extra. And when I graduated from Northwestern, see what happened too was when I was, then I got on the bench in 91, I took one class at Northwestern, then two. Then after the fourth one, I decided to go back and to get the degree I always wanted to get. So it took me 10 years, but in 2004, I graduated with a degree in radio, TV, film from Northwestern. And what's really inspiring and interesting, of course, I was twice as old as anybody in the class, but many of my colleagues, or I should say my classmates, are now in LA working, and it was kind of fun because they remember me because I used to feed them. I was working at the time and they were, going to school and, So anyway, it was very inspiring. My mother was really an inspiration, so much that I've accomplished. And one thing she said to me when I was a teacher going to law school at night. And, it was the bells. I was late one morning for the 8:30 bell. I got in about 8:35 and the principal pulled me in her office. And she said, I know you're going to law school and blah, 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 but you got to be here on time. And, so it's 8:30. And she said, and anyway, you're going back as a second career. Aren't you the oldest one in your class? Before you graduate, when you graduate, you're going to be 28, right? So that weekend I went home and my mother, every weekend she'd do my wash because no one does your wash better than your mom.
Right.
We were sitting there solving the problems of the world over a pot of coffee. And I said, Mom, maybe this law school isn't such a good thing. Miss Ryan said to me, by the time I graduated, I'd be 28. My mother looked at me like I was and said, honey, you're going to be 28 anyway. Why not be 28 and a lawyer? Which was the inspiration for me to go back and get the degree I always wanted to get. You're going to be 54 anyway. Why not be 54 with a degree in theater from Northwestern? And the same thing with what I'm doing now. I have found that as an actor, age is irrelevant. The more life experience you have, you bring that subtext to your character. Yeah. And that's life experience, which is the best experience. So, so the judge thing and the acting thing, I retired, and then I became an actor full time because it's just, you know what? It's a different type of job. You are a conduit for human emotion. You know, when you are a judge or prosecutor, whatever we do, it's service to others. And it's the same thing. Your service is connecting with the psyche, with inspiration, with life experience of those who are watching you, because that's what you do. It's your discovery of thought and your character, I think, that reaches those who are watching you too. It's their discovery as well.
I love that. And one fun little fact is that Gloria and I, though we didn't know each other, we're at Northwestern in overlapping years.
Really?
Corbin, I don't know if you know that. Yeah.
Wow,
So when
that's
she was
crazy.
there over that 10-year arc, I was there for my 4 years, which is really kind of cool. I did want to ask you, Gloria, because you touched on it. I think especially with kind of life right now, and with people kind of figuring out or reassessing what they want to do or what field they want to be in, whether it's acting, whether it's storytelling, whether it's other things. How do you feel about going back to school? How do you feel about jumping back into whatever age you're at, going to school?
I'm the perennial student, so it's hard to say. I'm always looking for a class. John, you know that. I mean, for baby boomers like myself, what has been really pretty challenging is the tech stuff, self-tape, this stuff. I realize you don't have to be a rocket scientist. It's just keep it steady and learn. But it's not just the tech stuff. I just find, education inspiring. I know that, even as a lawyer, and I've always kept my license, we have to do a certain amount of continuing legal education. So I think no matter what you do in life, that is kind of set in motion, that you constantly have to continue with your skill set, polish it, readdress it, refine it, keep it fresh. Whether you sit and read a book, especially during COVID, if you get on and you take advantage of other classes that have been online, even though I know for some, they don't like that. They miss being in person, just like the audition process. But I think whatever you can do to continue that education is really important to keep it fresh.
Well, and I think one of the advantages that's exciting is you can be, let's say, in a smaller market, let's say for acting, and you can take classes with someone you really love in LA or New York. I mean, that's been the big silver lining for me. And, some of the classes I teach is now I have students in Atlanta and Chicago and New York, and they have the technology and I have the technology. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think that's such a wonderful, or Wisconsin, where I'm from, it's a really cool thing that you can find the people or things that inspire you. And, there's facilities online now to continue it. And yeah, you do have to balance. I think you're right. People do miss the, person-to-person contact. But, I was just talking to my wife, and she's looking at a program, not acting, but I think, what do they call it? Like you don't have to be there every Monday from 7 to 10. You can take it at different times. So I think that's kind of cool too, the flexibility, where if there's something that's like, it's a recorded lesson, then it's a little more pressure on you. I like to have to be there, but you also get that flexibility. So you're like, okay, I can do this later on in my day and try to work around that. So
yeah, I think the Zoom world has just become more, people are like being professional and figuring it out. I remember I took a college class where the professor was pretending people were in the audience and he was like asking them questions, and that was just a little weird. And I think that now that we're expanding, we can actually understand how to reach more audiences, be able to teach people, and like learn all the things that you've learned, Gloria, which is amazing. Actually, with that in mind, I was curious, if you were to go back and talk to baby Coco, what would you tell her about how to, for both, becoming a lawyer and a judge as well as acting? Like, what would you go back and be that kernel of truth that you is true and within you, and you want to keep teaching everybody around you?
You mean like, well, to me, everything in life is a stepping stone. Mm-hmm. You get to one level or to one thing that you're doing in life, which leads to another. But I think really what's important is the burn in the belly. If you have that seed there, no matter what you do, you keep on going back to it and you aspire to it. Like, that's what happened to me with acting. Whether it was when I was 3 years old, it's followed me, the performance bug, my entire life. And it's not, Corbett, about seeing myself on television, or, oh, gee, did you see my mug on TV? That means I'm validated. I've made it. What it is, at least for me, and I think for most people, I hope, is it's a form of service to others. You are a conduit for human emotion. So you are a storyteller. And everything that you've done in your life is you sharing with somebody else. And not just all the good stuff. You know, I've had to embrace rejection in every level of what I've done in my life, every single level. You know, I'm 4'10" and a half. I wasn't picked on the volleyball league, okay? Didn't happen. I was a bench warmer, but I was on the team, you know? So it's from everything of understanding that it's not always about you. It's about maybe you just didn't fit into that particular picture. But so it's those rejections too that also give you inspiration to continue. Because if you got that burn in the belly, and I think that's really important for actors, there's nothing that's going to deter you no matter what happens in your life, because it's there. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? I hope
It does, yeah. I think it's not so much, I was just listening to a book the other day that it's like failure, everybody fails. It's just the person who keeps standing up. That's the person who perseveres. You just keep going and going and going, and it's going to be okay. Everybody fails.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, whatever you believe.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's a great point too, because the way I like to equate it is like, look at some of like the greatest directors and stuff. They've got movies that are bombs, that are flops. And you're like, oh, they're great. Now we remember they're really great ones, but if you go through their IMDb, if you go through their history, trust me, there's some stinkers in there. You know what I mean? And that's part of the process. It's like not every single one. Even though I was looking at David Fincher's list and he's got a lot of hits.
Yeah, he does.
But you know, if you go through, you know, whoever it is, you know, and actors also, you know, and I think that is part of the process. And that idea of rejection or failing, you know, when I look back on things that have happened in my career, a lot of times out of that kind of desperation or burn in the belly is when I kind of like leveled up. You know what I mean? It's when I kind of had to dig deep and had to say, okay, am I really committed to this? Am I really spending the time to this? Or am I kind of like floating by? And I think the floating by, there's time for that, especially if you're recharging your energy. But I think it's also like, it's like when you stop going to the gym and you're like, oh, I'm so used to not going to the gym. You know what I mean? Versus when you get in the habit and then you're like, okay, this is my habit. Now you're at the gym. Are you pushing yourself or are you just kind of doing your simple routine, you know? So I love that, Gloria. Yeah, I think that's
an analogy. Reminds me this morning, instead of doing 10-pound weights, I did 12 and a half.
Yep. Nice. Exactly. And that's, you know, how you kind of crank it up, you know? And I think there's a similar thing with challenging ourselves or testing ourselves, you know, and you know, Corbin and I are putting together a group. We're trying to take a show to the Edinburgh. I don't know how to say it. The Fringe over there in Scotland. And
can I go?
You're in, Gloria. Yes, you're in. And we're workshopping it, but it's a lot of work. And you know, we're hoping it's successful. We're hoping it works out. But I've never been over there to do a show before for directing a show. Corbin's never been over there acting in a show, and so we don't know exactly how it's going to turn out. And to me, that's part of the excitement. It's also part of the, I think, fear that prevents people. We're also trying to raise money. We're going to be raising money, and so like that can be intimidating. You know, there's a lot of steps that can be intimidating. And Gloria, what you're saying, I think it's really cool that you went back to school. You weren't intimidated, or whatever age you're at. I think that's one thing that I think is this idea that people, they get intimidated by stuff, they get scared. So then they don't move. They kind of stay right where they are, even if they're unsatisfied. You know, it's safer right there. And that's,
you know, it's, you know, you put your self-esteem on the line when you get in front of people. I remember I used to be really scared in class. You get up and you kind of perform. And I read an interesting article the other day from Octavia Spencer about stage fright, and that she had a bit of stage fright. And so I think sometimes when you get up and you do scene work or scene study, you know, that can scare you and put you back if you have a little bit of that. But if you have that angst or that energy and angst, it kind of propels you no matter what you're a bit of afraid of. And I think that also helps you to achieve. But you know what? I really do believe, John Corbin, that if you have that burn in the belly, that there's something in you that I know for me, all those years, it was just tugging at my sleeve. Somehow I had to get back to it, had to get back to it. I don't know. Sometimes the psychology of that is fascinating to me, just like understanding how the psychology of rejection, that you have to embrace that. And that word rejection has maybe a negative connotation to it. I wish there was another way actors could look at that or feel that if they don't get the call back, if they didn't get a booking, even though they were on a veil. You know, how do you think? What's a better word than rejection than for us to help that get over that psychological issue of rejection?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. I mean, I think well, here's what I'd say. I'd say my honest truth to that, Gloria, is it does feel like rejection. The feeling is real. There is that feeling, but hopefully the mindset is, that's part of the process of, like, when you're going on job interviews, when you're going on auditions, that you're going to have to go through that. Even though we do that a lot. I guess what I would say is, what I was thinking about, Gloria, with that is, what can you control? So there's stuff that's out of your control. You can't, cast yourself in a project you're auditioning for if it's your own project, sure, but that's out of your control. So what you can control is, how hard you're working, how much you're working, who you're rehearsing with, who you're studying with, all those things are things you can control. And I think, I'm not going to try because I'm going to butcher it, but that idea of, like, knowing what you can control and not control, and, like, finding that there's a quote about that, and knowing what that is can be really helpful. And I think that's part of what happens as you evolve, in a sense, as an actor, is you start to realize, it's less about rejection and more about, this is what I can control. I can control going in here, doing the role, having fun with it. And then after that, it's out of my hands. I was also thinking, Gloria, with what you were saying, whose life are you living? Right? Whose life are you living? Hopefully you're living your life for yourself. I mean, yes, you want other people, but my point is, hopefully you're not saying, well, I really need to, do this thing and not be a writer or not be this other thing because other people kind of really, really want me to, right? I mean, we need to be able to pay our bills and things like that. But, sometimes I think that a lot of people can get caught up in, like, oh, what's going on with that person over there? Oh, they're getting married. They're having a baby. I'm behind, I need to catch up. I need to blah, blah. And I really am, like, encouraging people to be on your own track. You know what I mean?
Not compare yourself to what other people are doing.
No, because you don't know everything that's going on in their life. And also your timeline is your own, and,
Right.
and so, if you're feeling like, hey, this is the time to switch things up, or this is the time to change the environment, I think go for that. You know what I mean? Try that. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but at least you tried it, versus kind of, being unhappy in the place you're at, or jealous, or.
And it's another life experience
Yeah.
in your acting computer.
Yes.
You
Yes.
did this, okay. You did it. Didn't quite work.
Gloria,
On to the next.
when you're feeling like, let's say, since we were talking about this, let's say you're feeling a little, like, low energy for acting. How do you recharge? What do you like to do to recharge?
Well, when I get up in the morning, first thing I have is coffee.
Okay.
And then I got to go work out.
Yep.
No, I'm sorry. There's one other thing I do before I work out. Do you know what? I like to pray a little.
Oh,
And I'm a novena gal.
what's novena?
A novena is a prayer you say for 9 days in a row or 9 weeks in a row. And so when you do a novena, you have a special intention. So it's like a form of meditation. I'm a parochial. I was born and raised a Catholic. So novenas, in fact, I got to show you. I have my novena book from St. Peter's Church in Chicago. And I found this in some of my dad's stuff, and it's from 1956.
Wow.
And it's got all these different novenas in it. So you can have a novena to St. Jude, Sacred Heart of Jesus. My favorite is St. Anthony, St. Jude too. But you have a special intention. And so you get up, you say that little prayer for the day, you go off, you work out, you try to go for those 12 and a halves, not the 10s.
Yeah.
And then that's what I try to do. And with acting too, I know sometimes if you are not like taking a class or doing something, I love period pieces. So I'm a Jane Austen fan. I love anything on BritBox. I think English actors are just, their methodology is so wonderful. So I really kind of like binge on anything across the pond because I love English. I mean, whether it's Dame Judi Dench or Helen Mirren, I mean, you look at their craft. I mean, Theo James is something else. He's not bad to look at either. But you know what? I mean, like you just I just love these actors, and even who's in Mare of Eastwood.
Mayor of Easttown. Mayor of Easttown.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Mare.
Kate Winslet.
Kate Winslet.
Yeah.
I mean, you watch their craft.
Yeah.
Colin Firth. I mean, I'm not saying that American actors are fabulous too, but there's something about, I don't know if maybe because they're all born and raised on Shakespeare, but there's something about their craft that I love to watch if I'm not doing something to work on mine, because I work on mine by watching them.
Yep. It's not just the accent, Gloria. It's not just the adorable accent. That's not throwing you. No, I agree, and I think there is a lot of background there in Shakespeare and in theater, which is very much an actor's medium, Gloria. So I think when you're doing a play and the actor has to carry a lot of it, I mean, there's definitely obviously the writer and director, but I feel like in a lot of the mediums, theater, where a lot of those actors come from, you do have to carry 100 pages of dialogue or something, and that's heavy lifting, right? And in my opinion, like you look at TV, and TV is more of a writer's medium. The writers are the producers, and then in film it's more of a director's medium. So I think when you have that background of a lot of theater, I think it does create really strong actors for sure.
I was here, they treat it like a career, like a job over there, and over here it's a little bit more freelance. It's more just like if you can get to it kind of feeling. So I think there's a lot of that instilled in their culture and their being of, I'm taking this very professionally. I will do anything that's possible to achieve it. Here we do that as well, but it's a little just a little bit more taboo nature to it, which is interesting.
Yeah,
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm curious, you kind of just mentioned a little bit about your morning routine. I love those things with the coffee, the exercise, and the what's it called, the morning prayer, the 9-day morning prayer?
Novena. 9. Not novena is 9.
I mean, so how are you? Are you a fan of routine then, Gloria? Are you a fan of routine?
Yes, structure.
Mm-hmm.
This is not just because I'm a parochial and everything was from the bells, the 8:30 bell, the 10:30 bell, this bell. But I really think structure and discipline, if you have it and you're groomed in it and conditioned it as a child, and is a part of your DNA, which has been the case with me, which is what helped me to absolutely be a teacher during this day, going to law school at night, then being a lawyer during the day, a prosecutor during the day, dabbling in all this other stuff, and ultimately being a judge during the day and going to Northwestern at night to get the theater degree I always wanted to get. So that structure and discipline is absolutely what did it for me, besides my mother's wise words.
I love that. I want to pivot a little bit. So I want you to tell us a little bit, Gloria, about your experience on Utopia and working with Rainn Wilson and John Cusack. How was that experience? Now, that was a show that came to Chicago. How was that experience?
Fabulous. It was terrific to be on Amazon Prime episodic. Yeah. And I was in 3 episodes. My character was Tony Tambler. She was an FDA agent.
Yeah, shut it down. Shut it down. That's her most famous line. If you guys check out one of her episodes, I don't remember which one it is, but Gloria comes charging in like a like a little bull in a china shop, and then she goes, "Shut it down, let's stop killing children," and it is the best. It is like, if we can find that clip, Corbin, we got to put it up.
You're working with actors who are both like 6 feet something, and you come in and what you got, you're like a little. Well, it was like. It wasn't like a Napoleon thing, but you know what? It was interesting because it had to do with that dynamic of this is my job, this is what I do, and I'm going to call you on it. So, in that experience, what did I draw upon? Interestingly enough, did I draw upon when I was a prosecutor and I'd have a defense attorney come in and want to do this or that and blah, blah, blah. Did I draw upon when I was a judge? And you know what? There was a prosecutor or defense attorney who was giving me a hard time, and I have to say, counsel, when I give a ruling, that is not an invitation for a further argument. Got it? So you draw upon these things that help you get to where you got to go to be that character. But it was great to work with these people who were, you had everything to learn from being in that environment, and especially working with A-list actors like both of them, and they were very kind and generous, and as were the directors. They wanted to make the scene work, and they cared about the scene just as much as you did. So you were in it together, and you fed off each other, and that's where that generosity of spirit and craft comes in when you're working with someone like John Cusack and Rainn Wilson.
Yeah. Did you learn any, were there any takeaways from watching them? Was anything further that was, practical that you're like, wow, you kind of said it, they do the same thing? Because that's what blows my mind, is seeing actors who are just in the same zone as you're doing, but just at a different level. They're doing exactly the same things, but it's a little bit more of a deep dive maybe. Or is there anything you noticed that was inspiring to kind of see them do?
Yes. There was a scene I did with Rainn Wilson, and you could see that he was in the moment to know, did it feel right? Was that the best? That was really good. And it was a scene where we had about 250 extras, and he and I were at this podium, and we did a couple of rehearsals and then a number of takes. And, he was he'd say, that felt good. That was it, And so it was great to see that inspiration in him, because he's feeling it and you're feeling it. And so it's the simpatico, but it was really generous to see how he shared with you what he felt good to him and what was okay, but let's do it again and do better.
I love that. Gloria, I'm also thinking you've done some consulting on TV shows, when they're taking place in courtrooms.
Oh, cool.
Yes.
I love the Jim Belushi story. Can you share that story?
Sure. When I first came to LA, I came out to LA in 2008 and did a showcase. It was like a week-long boot camp, and it was kind of interesting because, Northwestern was a lot of theater, and this boot camp was about film, television. So they kind of put your theater MO, what you would learn, your methodology, a little bit to the side, because now you're acting for that little camera, right? It's a different methodology. So I did this week-long boot camp, and I came back, and I got a call that there was an agent that wanted to represent me. And I came home, and my poor husband, I said, I got to go. I got an agent in LA. And we were married at a house. And I just went out to LA. And that's how I met you, John. I was renting a studio apartment. So my first job was a legal tech advisor for the pilot of The Defenders that starred Jerry O'Connell and Jim Belushi.
Jim Belushi, yeah.
Yeah. And it was interesting because we had a little connection, because Jim Belushi also worked with Del Close at Second City. He and his brother were Second City people from way back, maybe about 3 or 4 years before I got there. But what was so great about that was I worked in some crappy courtrooms over my time. When I was a prosecutor, they used to be on top of the police stations, and you know, they were just not the greatest cleanliness places, but it was court. And so this was a courtroom that was supposed to be the same flavor. So I remember I was working with the prop guy, and I said, remember, you got to make this courtroom look like it smells. It's got to smell. So it was just really fun. It was fun working with both of them. You know what? It was great. I mean, I share some stories. Which one? Is there one in particular?
Gloria. Yeah, the one I'm talking about is when you like talked to Jim like off camera about something, and then he like did it in the take, and it was yeah, that one.
Yeah.
So
there was emotion. I was sitting talking to him. I said, you know what? Your client is in.
So they're not rolling. They're like off camera.
Yeah, it's in between takes. And I said, you know, your client is in custody, and so you know you should demand trial because he's in custody and they're asking for a continuance and da 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 da. So there's a particular motion for that. So I didn't know he was going to do it, and he goes down there rolling, and he goes up. I file a motion for blah, blah. And it wasn't in the script. I'm like, oh. You know,
dare to be noticed.
You know, there was one other. It was fun too because being a retired judge, I remember there was one thing. The judge came out and he was apologizing to the jury, and I said, "Excuse me, the judge does not have to apologize." So it was it was fun. It was great. It was a great experience, and once again, working with a crew like that, Carol Mendelson was. The executive producer, and in fact, I still keep in touch with the first DA on it. And so, you know, you make, you know, what you do, you don't know, you know, where you're going to cross paths with these people again.
Well, and Gloria, I'm even thinking real quick with that. One of the things that's interesting is, and people in the business and a lot of times outside the business talk about like how real is what they're doing in the courtroom. Like, is this real? And you know, you want it to be as real as possible without like kind of losing the drama, you know, and the example I give is like, we don't really want to watch someone spend 3 minutes making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. We'll go to sleep.
Right.
We want to kind of speed that process up.
Right.
So we're not technically real, but we're trying to get it as much as we can. You know, my sister worked for a bit in like the Grey's Anatomy writers room, and you're always trying to say, okay, what are like real cases? What are things that we can pull? But then it's still entertainment. So we have to figure out, you know, how to not lose the audience, how to make it, you know, make sense. And I think that's an interesting balance that, you know, for actors too, where we are trying to play something that is maybe a real person, a real character, but yet we're still acting. So it's not real, you know? So it's like that interesting balance, right?
And knowing a knowledge of that and how it works does really empower the actor to be more comfortable with that, whether it's in medicine or the law. So it's not like they want to know what exactly is the medical issues involved here, what exactly is the rule of law. You get as close to it as you can.
Well, yeah, I remember I did a commercial casting, and we were looking for someone to be a swimmer, like a female swimmer, you know, and I think the spot was supposed to be like the Olympics. And we had like an Olympic swimmer come in, and she didn't book the spot because someone else, a non-Olympic swimmer looked more like an Olympic swimmer, you know, for this commercial than a real Olympic swimmer, you know? So it's sometimes it works out where, you know, you need this basketball player, so you get a basketball player, but sometimes it also works out. It's like, well, you know, this guy really looks like a cop, so we're going to cast him as a cop. It works, you know, that read is there. And I think that's part of an interesting thing with, you know, when you're there advising Gloria, it's like, well, how much do I say? Stop. This is not how we'd ever do it. And also, okay, I see where they're kind of, you know, wiggling it through, you know, to
Well, John, I've had a number of auditions for judge roles, and I have not booked it. And I did not book them. So you want to talk about the psychology of embracing rejection?
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's a travesty. You should be playing judges. Also, while I'm thinking about this, I know this is a side note, but, and maybe you know this, Corbin, but Gloria married my wife and I.
Oh,
so
really?
Gloria was the officiant at my wife and my wedding, and I just wanted to take a moment to say how grateful I was. And you were so great at it. You were so lovely. And one of the fun things we did is our wedding took place on a farm, and we kind of combined the two, which was my family in Wisconsin has had something called Ruby Farms. And then we took an apple box, which is something you use on set to like raise people up or lower. And since Gloria was 4'10", we made an apple box that said Ruby Farms on it. And then Gloria stood on that to marry my wife and I. And, we still have the apple box.
I love it. That's great.
We'll flash a photo of that possibly. And, but it was such a special day. And Gloria, you were a big part of it. And so
I was honored to be. Thank you.
I think there's
what
something.
A wedding too, John. It was a fabulous wedding.
Well, I think there's something lovely when the people you want to create with, collaborate with, work with, you also get along with,
Right.
And it's a big thing I've been talking about recently, which is I love that, what we consider kind of Hollywood is getting rid of a lot of the jerks, or as many as they can, you know what I mean? Or a lot of the sexists or the whatever it is, I think there's something, or hopefully I think there's something really great that, and I've said this before, but you really want to work on great projects with great people. And I like to throw in there whatever the level. So even if it's a high level project, hopefully you're working with great people. If it's a lower level, we want to be working on the big stuff. But the idea is, some of my favorite memories are on, low budget theater stuff or, a web series or things like that. And so, but the people a lot of times are what makes it up. The people are that's the family that comes together for however it is, a couple days, a day, a couple weeks, months. So hopefully you are being a part of that and attracting people like that,
I agree.
Well said, John. Well said. Thank you.
Nailed it.
All right. Yeah.
Okay, so let's transition into something fun. Let's go to your best bad acting. Let's jump into that.
My best bad acting. Okay.
So take a look in the chat.
Can I say the line?
Yeah, but are you going to perform it or are you just going to say it?
I want to perform it.
Your job is to do a fun, over-the-top bad acting performance of it. So whenever you're ready.
Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
Good. And let's get that line right before it too. That's on there too.
It's just that you got to ask yourself this. Oh,
one question. That's part of it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Let's take it from
Looking at what was in quotes. Okay.
That's okay.
You got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
So good.
All right, good. Now, Corbin, do you have an adjective for Gloria to throw on top of this?
I kind of want to see Gloria angry. I want to see Gloria just like full on, just super mad.
All right.
I don't think I can imagine it.
Best bad acting, super mad, line from Dirty Harry.
You got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
Ooh, I'm
Good.
scared.
I like it. Gloria, can you?
That was asleep with a fish.
You're sleeping. I felt it. Can you, Gloria? Can you do it as like a little Tinkerbell voice? Like a little
Yeah.
fairy voice. Yeah.
Well, you gotta ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
Yes. Oh my
I'm so
gosh.
happy.
That's amazing, Gloria.
No, I have to ask you, as my directors,
Yes.
did I do okay on those adjustments?
You did wonderfully.
So
And you know
great.
what? You did so great, Gloria. And like we say, it's your best bad acting in a fun way. Even though your acting was good, you still did a really
Oh, but I
good
want you to
job.
say, no, I like that you said good,
Yeah.
not
yeah.
great.
Yeah,
Because
well-
whenever you do it, that was great. And then you never hear from them again. So I'm glad you said good.
You know what? You know what? Here's the thing, Gloria. It's interesting you say that. When I run castings, I find myself saying that a lot at the end of auditions. I'll say, great job or good job. And please, actors, don't read too much into the good job or great job. It's part of my way of saying you did a nice job. And it's time for you to kind of leave the room in a polite way. That's really what it's saying, Gloria. So the little
What they want you to do
yes,
is to stay in the room and
yes,
tell them to do it this way, not try it this way. Because if you do that, that means you like us and you're
yes.
seeing that we're malleable for the director instead of just the audition.
It's a good point. Now, I would just say from the casting side, I would love to do that. Sometimes it's a time constraint. Sometimes we got somebody coming right next, and sometimes even in callbacks, we schedule for a certain amount of time. And then let's say we have a director who's taking a long time with people. Then later on, we got to squeeze it tighter because at the beginning they did do that and they took 20 minutes per group and we have scheduled 10 minutes per group. So then later in the day, Gloria, people don't always know behind the scenes what they can't control is like, yeah, this director would love to give you some redirect, but we have said we're way behind. We need to kind of crank through some people. And that's another thing. It's not always fair, right? I mean, I've seen it too, where like, when do you like come in for an audition or something? Like, when do you send your self-tape in? All these things. It's really hard to know. Sometimes you get them right after lunch and they've all just eaten and they're excited, their bellies are full and it's a great time to come in. Sometimes the end of the day, you're the last person. This happened to a friend of mine. She was the last one to come in and she had such great energy. They're like, oh my gosh, she's amazing. Sometimes you're the first person of the day and you set where the bar is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You set the bar and then it was like, well, he wasn't as good as, our first guy, that guy was great. And so it is interesting. And when you say that, Gloria, I love that you said that. And, the other thing I tell actors is if you're not hearing anything on set, like from the director, you're doing fine. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, especially maybe if we're more of like a day player or they're, guest star, co-star, we love to hear, we love as actors. We love like, okay, yeah, help me out. Let me make it better. Let me make it better. But if you don't hear anything on set, because a lot of times the director, they've got 100 things going on. If they're not talking to you, usually that means that's a good sign, right? They'll let you know if you're doing it wrong. And if you do like a great job, yes, maybe they'll come up and say great job. But a lot of times they're dealing with so many other things. It's good as actors to be okay with like, great, we just did a take, no one said anything. Good. I must be doing my job. You know what I mean? So I love that you mentioned that, Gloria, because it is a good mindset thing to be thinking about, I mean, I think the word that comes up for me there is validation. We all love validation. It's why like if you do comedy, you love to hear the laughs are validation. So, it's kind of undeniable, but hopefully we also are working on that inner strength. Right.
Can I add one thing? When you said the word validation, that took me back to when I was doing storefront theater in Chicago. I did this play about my uncle who died on Ellis Island. And I knew I did my job. I was validated when I heard people cry in the audience. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's like an energy that you said, as an actor, you just did your job to be a conduit for human emotion.
Mm-hmm. That's lovely. That's lovely. And you affected other people. I think that's a beautiful thing, where you make you're affecting other people. You're making them laugh. You're making them cry. You're making them think. You're making
your own discovery, right?
How it really, yeah. I think that's a lovely, lovely thing. Great. Well, there's one other thing we like to do, Corbin. We'll just kind of stack them up here. Should we do a little bit of brag time? Brag time. It's time for Gloria to brag. Okay, Gloria. So this is something that's exclusive to us. Is that a lot of times actors, we have to be real humble, or we do these hashtags gratitude things on Facebook, which is fine, like being on set, but this is your opportunity, Gloria, to give us a little brag on a job you've done recently or something that you're, excited about or proud of that you booked or got to do, or, what's a brag you have, like an acting brag that you can think about?
An acting brag. Well, there's something I'm doing right now, which is a fusion of being a judge and being an actor.
Yeah.
And it's Kenemac Productions. And what they do is they have a play with regular actors, and it's a real case. It's either about defamation or it's about just cause. Just cause has to do with employment contracts. But it's both have different areas of the law. And there is this a playwright who wrote these plays, and they sell this to law schools and universities all over the country. And they've hired me to be the judge, and it's live when I come on to deliberate. So anybody who watches this play is a juror. And so they have to decide at the end of the play how they're going to vote. So I come on, in fact, that's where this background is, because I put on my costume, my robe, and I lead these law students, in this, and it's live, they have questions, and I kind of guide them to answer the questions. What are the elements of this offense? What does the plaintiff have to prove by a preponderance of the evidence, et cetera, in order to win the case? She's got to tip the scales. He's got to tip the scales, 51%. This is a civil suit, so it's 51% as opposed to criminal, which is beyond a reasonable doubt. So that's very fun because I do it out of my house, and I do quite a few shows, and it's live, and it's with these students, and they're very sharp, and so you have to be there to listen. You know what? It's when the fusion of acting is, you have to listen. You have to listen. It's the thought that you think after whatever said is done that counts. That's how your line comes out. Whatever someone said before you, it's a thought that you think after whatever is said or done is how your line's going to come out. So you got to let it land. Same thing with this, kind of keeps me on my toes because I have to listen to every question that these jurors have to help them deliberate before they make their final vote. So it's a great fusion, and I was doing it during COVID, so it was really a beautiful fusion of the law and acting.
I love that. I love that. Do you still get to use the gavel, or is that not a part of it? Is there a gavel?
No.
Just kidding. The robe is.
But I do have that gavel. I have a number of them.
I figured as soon as you put that robe on, Gloria, I was like, oh gosh, like we better be on our best behavior, Corbin.
Yeah.
Right?
No, there's always order in your court.
Of course.
In my court.
Of course.
Fair but firm.
Yes. Yes.
Anyway.
We wanted to ask you, Gloria, do you have like a favorite acting book and also a favorite like life book?
Yes, I do have a favorite. Acting books.
Okay.
It's a plural.
Yeah.
Often I still refer to my notes from Northwestern.
Wow. Great.
I kept every notebook I had. I'm a copious note taker.
Yeah.
So I refer to that a lot. And also when I was in LA, I took a class I took a class about soap operas, and he is the casting director from General Hospital.
Is it Mark Teschner? Is that right?
Yes.
Mark Teschner? Yeah.
And I took copious notes in his class, and then every night I would go and I would type them out. And I did the same thing with every other class I took, whether it was for commercial, with Mark Teschner, whatever it was. So oftentimes before I go into an audition, I refer to those notes. It brings me back to center me to where I am to, and there are a number of great teachers. Brian Reese was another terrific teacher. Also I'm so sorry, I can't remember these names. I mean, there were so many of them. Terrific teachers in Los Angeles. John Ruby, I took copious notes in his class that I refer to all the time when we do scenes. That you taught me about single cam, multicam, all that stuff. You go back and you refer to them, and it centers you for what you need to do for this particular role or job or audition.
So you prefer your notes kind of versus acting books, which makes sense. It's very, can be very.
Leslie Kahn was another terrific one.
Yep.
Leslie Kahn is the one where I got that. It's the thought that you think after whatever son that counts. She even gave you a wristband with that on it.
Yep. That's great.
So
that's great. Gloria, what about like a life book you could recommend? Is there a book you're a big fan of? If a book that inspires. Okay.
My novenas.
The novenas. Great. The novenas. Awesome. Would if I'm more spiritual than religious, would I still enjoy it? The novenas?
Yeah. You know what? Because no matter what prayer you want to say,
Yeah.
if it's an important enough intention for you,
Mhm.
you will find a moment for 9 consecutive days,
Mhm.
for 9 consecutive weeks. You will find that moment, whether it's every Tuesday at 9, whatever it is. If it's important enough to you, you will draw back to it because that's your inspiration that someone's got to be listening, no matter who you revere in the universe.
Mhm.
Consistency sometimes is a big part of the key.
Can I do the novenas to the Rock? If I revere the Rock, does that work? Awesome. All right. Well, Gloria, from Corbin and we want to thank you
Yeah,
so
thank you.
much for your time, and we wish you so much success in your journey. We're excited that you're making the big move from Chicago to LA, and
Yes.
we're excited to see you not just in judge roles, which we know you can crush, but other roles. Please, you can check out Gloria in Utopia on Amazon Prime, and she's just a lovely, lovely person. So good luck with everything, Gloria, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And thank you, Corbin.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thank you.
John. Thank you for all that you do for others in our industry and to further our craft. It means so much to us that we have you. So thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Court is adjourned.